It is officially summertime. We deserve summer, right? In Northeast Ohio, we deserve summer. And we know in Northeast Ohio, if you've been here long enough, that the weather here can be really crummy and it's really unpredictable. So a lot of these memories that we have, really good memories of growing up and childhood, are tied into summer because summer is such an infrequent occurrence. Rather, the good weather of summer is such an infrequent occurrence. And each of us are so unique. Each of us are so different that we all celebrate summer in different ways. So as a curious guy, and I think I'm pretty curious, I like to ask people questions, and I asked a question in our Facebook community. I asked people about their favorite summertime memories. One mother said, Crystal said, "Summer brought me my little angel, and now watching her love summer is the best." And Autumn said, "My favorite summertime memory is playing in the creek in the backyard with my dog. We chase each other. I catch tadpoles, and she would stick her nose and blow bubbles. The love of my life for sure." Shayla Davis said, "Swimming in the pool in our backyard with my sister and dad." And Scott her husband pretty much copied and said, "Nighttime in the swimming pool with my brothers and my cousins." And Dina said that catching lightning bugs and making bats swoop at her friend's head. And I was curious about that, and I asked, that's something that I definitely want to try to do with my children, because that seems like something to be super fun. Connie said, "I love spending time at the pool with my son, watching sunsets, camping in the backyard, anything I can do with my husband and son. Growing up, I was boring. My favorite thing about summer was sleeping in late. Can I get an amen from the congregation about sleeping in?" That's right, we got to sleep in. Christy said 2 weeks, 10 camping at Lake Shasta. Heart, 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 heart. Because the emojis copy into my notes. Just a lot of hearts there. Camping's pretty cool. Brittany Gordon said the ice cream truck. Not gonna lie, it still is. Brittany, do you realize a Star Crunch costs $18 on the ice cream truck? You just drive down the road and get 18 boxes for $18? But you gotta love the ice cream truck. Becca says it's a tie between all the camping trips and the year my softball team went to state. Alicia said houseboat trips with fishing and swimming when my mom was still alive. Great family vacations. Mary Ness said staying up late, sleeping in, not paying bills, the beach, ice cream and junk food, all the good stuff. Mary's not here, but Mary, you don't have to pay the bills if you don't want to. Next week, a sermon on finances. Sydney said mission trips. One for every single year of high school. My favorite was definitely Manhattan when my life was changed forever. I agree, that's where we found Brian at. That's where we found Brian at. Ted and Dorothy said Cornerstone Music Festival. Dave George said, "I don't think I can decide on just one thing as a favorite. I mean, camping and fishing and fires and friends and family and food, being out in God's creation, whether on foot or boat or bike, out riding down the roads with the wind in my face." I love that stuff. Now, I can't read all of them, but my favorite was the one that my wife wrote. And she said, and I wish we had some piano music back here because this is super touching. It says, "It was summer when I first saw him. At the nursing home where we both worked, he was the best, hardest worker there, always willing to help other people. Big brown eyes and purple hair. Finely dressed, cute little goatee, love at first sight." Now, she didn't really write that, but she would have if she would have saw my post, because it's true. She's talking about me. In the summer she met me. Can we get some applause for her meeting me? Amen. Oh, man, summer is full of great memories. And all those memories are represented by sandals and swimming pools and ice cream and sunscreen. But for me, the best representation of summer are beach balls, because they scream warm weather. They scream days at the pool, or days at the beach and nights at the pool. And so we thought we would celebrate the first week of summer, the first Sunday of summer, with some beach balls. And we had planned on giving some beach balls away with the Altered logo on it. But we're going to have to blame the United States Postal Service for not having them here in time. So you'll get them next week. You'll get them next week. That's going to be pretty cool. That's right. That's good. That's good. So we wanted to use beach balls to represent summer, but also to raise a question. Should we have beach balls in church? I mean, beach balls are really fun, but this is church. And beach balls are great for summer, but are they okay for here? I mean, are we supposed to do this stuff? Is it okay to have fun? And let me tell you, I was in the back dying of laughter because you guys are trying to worship and you're getting hit in the back of the head with these beach balls. And the kids, I mean, maybe, okay, let's be honest, maybe they were annoying, but the kids had so much fun with those beach balls. They had so much fun. So we asked the question, is it okay? Is it okay for us to have fun in church? And I know we have this conflict going on in our minds. Is it okay for us to have beach towels as decorations? And if you didn't know, we're going to give some snow cones away after church. Snow cones away after church. And so we ask these questions, are these things okay? Because we want to be respectful of God. But also, if we're honest, most of us have had some kind of experience with church that makes us think that Christians are a bit stifling, that church is a place where you're not really allowed to laugh or smile or see beach balls. So we wonder if these things are okay. I don't want to hit anybody in the face with that. I mean, maybe Brian, but it would bounce back at me and hit me, and this would fall over. It'd be a disaster. My sermon would be ruined. But we want to know if this is a place where we can experience those things. Or is church a place where we're always supposed to feel sad or guilty? Is it a place that we're going to get in trouble if we don't go? Anybody ever have like a family situation where if you didn't go to church, like you're going to be in trouble? I did. Christian people or church people don't often give the impression that they're very happy people. Let's be honest. The German philosopher Nietzsche said that if the Christians expect me to be a believer and their redeemer, then they have to start looking a lot more redeemed. In other words, if we want people to believe that Jesus is something to be joyful about, we should probably start acting a little more joyful. Now, I believe personally that there's something that God has designed us for, that God has put inside of our souls that we don't take advantage of. Something that encourages beach balls and beach towels and snow cones. It's a thing called celebration. Celebration. If you've missed the last couple weeks, we talked about a staycation. A staycation is staying local, it's chilling, it's enjoying everything that home has to offer. It's a time of focusing on simple pleasures. And we talked about the summer in America being a staycation for every single church. Because when summer comes, all those cool things we love about summer, like barbecues and warm weather and camping and baseball and the beach, they pull many of us away from our routines. They pull many of us away from home. And what happens is church attendance declines for 3 months because we're so busy trying to enjoy the sun and the warmth and everything that summer has to offer. But once fall hits, we start to get back into these routines and people start coming back to church and we come back ready and we start inviting people and things start to really take off. And this is the pattern of church in America. So the question is, what do we do during our staycation? We enjoy our staycation. We enjoy chilling out and picnics and drive-ins and connect groups and all those great things about summer. We enjoy one another's company. But we focus on what we can do to get ready as a church for when the routines hit again and things pick back up and the church season begins. And I said for the past 3 weeks, I'll say it again, yes, there is a church season. So what we hope to do this summer is use the staycation as an opportunity to grow here and improve here, so when the time comes, we can grow out there. So what we want to focus on during the summer is developing great community. Life-giving, restoration-minded, Jesus-honoring community. And last week, we talked about the first element of great community, which was commitment. And this week, we're going to talk about the second element of great community, which is celebration. And we're going to do that by talking about the book of Nehemiah. So if you have a Bible, open up to Nehemiah 12. If you've got the Bible app, open up to Nehemiah 12. Anybody need a Bible? We'll give you one for free if you want to keep one. Anybody want a Bible? We'll also have the text above me on the screen. Now, Nehemiah is a fascinating book, and I'll probably do an entire sermon series on Nehemiah within the next year. Fantastic book. But I want to give you just a little bit of context. There's this group of people that still exists today called the Israelites, the Hebrews, the Jewish people. And the center of their cultural and religious life is in a place called Jerusalem. And their identity truly their identity centers around this city and a building inside this city called the temple. The problem is there's no wall around this city or temple. And back in the day, that was like a really big deal, okay? And so there's no wall around the city, and there hasn't been a wall around the city for 70 years. So a man named Nehemiah, who was Jewish and part of a government in Syria, he got anxious about this wall. He knew his city, his hometown, didn't have a wall. This concerned him a great deal. So Nehemiah returns to Jerusalem to build this wall. And unbelievably, under this man's leadership, he rallies these people together, and they build this wall. They build this wall that is 15 feet thick in 52 days. So for the first time in 70 years, this city has a wall. And this changes everything for them because now they're safe. And the people who had left the city because they didn't feel safe were moving back to the city. And it gave them a sense of nationalistic pride, and faith is restored. So naturally, they want to have a celebration. And the celebration is described in Nehemiah chapter 12, starting in verse 27. At the dedication of the wall of Jerusalem, the Levites were sought out from where they lived and were brought to Jerusalem to celebrate joyfully the dedication with songs of thanksgiving and with music of cymbals, harps, and lyres. And the lyre is sort of like a harp. It's a string instrument, but a little bit different sound. But prior to this, to the completion of the wall, these people were spread out. Again, they felt safer outside the city than they did in the city. So you have these people called Levites who are priests, and these guys, again, living outside the city. So Nehemiah puts them on notice, and he says, hey, we're going to have a celebration. The wall is completed. Come back in town because we're going to celebrate. And he describes what the celebration is going to look like. First, the celebration will be joyful. Have you ever been to something that people called a celebration but wasn't quite joyful? Like it was kind of boring, maybe like a work picnic or something like that. Or let's be honest, like a college commencement ceremony. It's just boring and awkward and it takes forever. You know what I'm talking about. There's a picture of my college commencement right here at Liberty University. The beach balls, right? There's beach balls, and this is a big deal. The president was there, so it was huge, totally huge. And there's a picture of me. I don't know, there's like 20,000 people. See, there's me on the right. That's not me. That's just some goofy guy with a little bit of facial hair. That's not me. I didn't go to my college commencement because it was boring. Like I'm not going to sit there for 8 hours to watch all these people graduate and no one even knows who I am. So I wasn't going to go. So I stayed home and I got some chicken wings and I sat in some air conditioning and I watched some baseball, okay? Because I wasn't going to sit there forever. I don't care what huge speaker's going to be there. I don't care. I'm going to stay home. Now that's not what's happening. That's like the most political thing I've ever said. It's the most political thing I ever will say. So instead So unlike my college commencement, the celebration Nehemiah was going to have was going to be joyful. It was going to be a celebration with music. And that's really good because I don't know about you, but for me to celebrate, there's got to be some music, right? Who likes to celebrate with some music, right? A little bit of music. Okay, you got to have it. Now, Nehemiah is going to have a celebration with cymbals and harps and lyres. And not just a few. This is going to be a celebration for thousands of people. So there's going to be dozens and dozens of cymbals, dozens and dozens of harps, dozens and dozens of lyres. But Nehemiah, he's going to get some singers as well. It says the singers were also brought together from the region around Jerusalem, for the singers had built villages for themselves around Jerusalem. So these singers are also living outside the city. Again, they felt safer away from the city than in the city. So Nehemiah brings them back into the city for the celebration. And I don't know how many singers there were, but again, this is a celebration for thousands of people. And there's no microphones. So you can imagine a multitude of singers, a multitude of instruments, because there's going to be a lot of people here. This is a big deal. And Nehemiah says, I had the leaders of Judah go up in the top of the wall. I also assigned 2 large choirs to give thanks. And so Nehemiah goes to the top of this wall. Remember, this is a very wide wall. It's 15 feet wide. And he also invites all the local leaders to come to the top of the wall, then the choir, and then the instruments. And what Nehemiah did is he had one group go to the right of the wall, circling the top of the wall, and one group circle the left of the wall, cymbals, harps, lyre, choir to the east, cymbals, harps, lyres, choir to the west. So these 2 groups of people are marching in different directions around the wall, circumventing the city, and they're meeting right in front of the temple. So if you're in the middle of the city, if you've shown up for this event, if you're at this ceremony, you're standing in the center, and on either side of you is this tremendous chorus, and all of this music, and colorful banners, and instruments, and choirs. It would have been totally unforgettable. A moment 70 years in the making. So you could imagine there'd be some food, right? You got to have food at a party. There'd be dancing. There'd be laughter and smiling and fist bumps. This is where they invented the fist bumps. It's probably in the Bible somewhere in the footnotes. There was hugs. And there was so much celebrating, so much joy, so much noise that Nehemiah says the sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. How loud would it have been to have been heard far away from the city? Loud. Last summer we had a parade in Cleveland with 1.5 million people. Do you think they heard that parade in Euclid or Lakewood? No, probably not. So what happened in Jerusalem must have been exceptional. Now what I'm wondering, do we have anything that's worth celebrating like that? How many people, and I want you to raise your hand, how many people came here this morning with the knowledge that Jesus Christ has given all of us an opportunity to be restored back to God? How many people came here knowing that? Okay. How many people came here knowing that He's given us an opportunity to gain new life through Him? How many people came here knowing that every single person who came through this door, doesn't matter what color your skin is, doesn't matter if you got tattoos on your arm, doesn't matter about your past, doesn't matter what you've done, what mistake you made, how many people came here knowing that Jesus Christ would give you a second chance to come to know Him? How many people knew that coming here? Okay. So if this is true, it's worth a celebration bigger than what happened in Jerusalem that day. If this is true, it means we should exude it with every word that we say, that people should see it on our faces, that they should see it in our giving, in our compassion, in our generosity, and our attitude of service, our acts of grace, our acts of forgiveness, our acts of mercy. People should see it on us. But if it's true, then why do so many of our churches lack a sense of joy? Why do so many Christian people have such a difficult time being inviting or loving or caring? I believe this happens for two reasons. First of all, honestly, we don't really believe it. And second of all, we are afraid of celebration. Now, when I say we don't believe it, I'm not saying that we don't believe that Jesus is real, or we don't believe that Jesus is our Savior. What I'm saying is, we don't believe in Him enough to let Him change who we are. What I've been trying to help people understand since the day that we started this church in September is that when you're in a relationship with Jesus, He will change you, whether you like it or not. And so what happens is people are often coming to me and saying, hey, if I come to your church, will you try to change this thing about me? And then you just sort of fill in the blank because everyone's got that thing that they don't really feel like they want to sort of give up, or the thing they're kind of hanging on to. And what I always tell them is, no, I'm not going to try to change that thing about you, but Jesus probably will. So everyone can identify with something about us. Look at me. Come on, look at me. Look at me. I'm talking to you. Every single one of us can probably identify with something that we don't think we want to really give up. You know? Like, we're not really going to go there with God. But the more you get to know Jesus, the more you fall in love with Him, the more He may ask you to leave that thing behind or take on some attribute that you don't think you had the aptitude for, like generosity or boldness or prayerfulness. Now, many of us, when we start to experience that, it starts to feel good. And we like how we feel, and so we sort of keep leaning into that, and we keep changing more and more. And we're open to it. And we grow and we celebrate Christ. And the impact that He's made on us helps us to influence other people. And they begin to celebrate the impact He's made on them. And we create a legacy of life-giving celebration in the name of Jesus. And truly and honestly, we can change people that we encounter. But some of us, and when I say some of us, I truly mean us because I have been there. Some of us resist. He keeps asking us and He keeps pleading with us, and we keep saying no. And so we stay in the same spot. We keep the same doubts instead of trying to work through them, and we grow in cynicism, and we grow in stubbornness, and all of this life-giving potential doesn't go anywhere. So what happens then? Nothing really at all happens. We become stagnant and probably a little self-righteous, and we don't celebrate because we don't really believe there's anything worth celebrating. We don't believe that there's anything worth talking about or showing people. And when people look at us, they'll see a Christian that represents a Christ that's not worth celebrating. I had a friend many years ago, and her name was Brenda. And Brenda gave me a tip on how to avoid this. Now, Brenda loved Jesus. I mean, she really, really loved Jesus. Brenda had adopted these two children, and they weren't hers, but she gave them her entire life. Like, she loved these kids. They were her world. Brenda was truly wonderful. Brenda also loved to swear, and she also loved to tell dirty jokes, and they were pretty funny if you're one of the people who like to listen to them kind of dirty jokes. She was rough around the edges. Like really, really, really rough around the edges. But she really, 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 really love Jesus. And she told me this one time, and I'll never forget it. She said, Aaron, Jesus is like cake. Now, I'm quoting her here. Aaron, I'm a big girl and I love me some cake. If I find some okay cake, some mediocre cake, I'm probably not going to share it with you. But if I get a piece of fantastic cake, if I get a piece of out of this world cake that's so delicious that I'm in love with this cake and I'm talking about this cake, I'm going to share it with every single person I know, because even though I love it, I love you more and I want you to experience this cake. Aaron, she said to me, Jesus is the same. I may not be perfect, but he's perfect. And I want the people I love to experience all that he is. This is what it means to celebrate. When we are open to what God wants to do in our heart, and then when we experience it, sharing it with the people we love, even when it's difficult, even when things aren't going our way. So share some cake, because the cake is still good even when you aren't. The second barrier to celebration is fear. People are afraid to celebrate. It sounds strange, but in the church, I'm telling you this is true. Because we aren't sure what God is allowing us to do. We don't know how to celebrate. And that's the balance that we talked about when I first started. Is the beach ball okay in church? Are snow cones okay? Are we allowed to do that? Is it okay to decorate with beach towels? Can we do this in a house of worship? Is God okay with this? Is it okay to laugh? Am I supposed to feel bad all the time? That's how I was raised. There's a tension that we wrestle with about celebration. We're afraid to do it. When I was leading youth ministry, the youth ministry that eventually became Altered Church, very early on we made a decision that we were going to have a lot of fun with teenagers. And we had fun. Anybody know about that fun? Anybody here that was in that? Yeah. Give it up for that. We had some fun. That was good. That was good. That was good. And we had fun. And then we made the choice that we were going to try to replicate some of the experiences that teenagers would have in the places they love, but without the negativity. So we created this youth center that mimicked like a club. You know, a club, right? So we had some black lights and some lasers and some DJ lights. And we had some incredible bass. I'm telling you, I consulted with the one and only Peter Newmeyer to set up our sound system. And when this bass was hitting, your chest was shaking. I'm telling you. It was fantastic. But the music we played was positive, and the setting was encouraging, and it was hope-giving. And what would happen is at 7 p.m., we'd turn the lights low, and we had smoke machines and bass and black lights, and all these kids who didn't know a thing about God, they would come in, and they would have a blast. They said, this is what the church is like? But then at 8 p.m., we'd turn the lights on. And I would preach the gospel for more than an hour, so like more than I'm preaching here, okay? I'd preach the gospel for an hour. And we would end these meetings and kids would be crying, and we'd be in this huge prayer circle. I'm telling you, 100, 120, 130 teenagers, and people will be praying for the first time. And they'd be asking Jesus to come in their hearts for the first time. It was incredible. But people, they would ask me questions like, why do you gotta have all that bass? And why do you have to have those black lights? And why do you have to have that smoke machine? I'm telling you, there was a time when 20% of the students of Madison, Ohio, between 6th grade In 12th grade, we're attending our youth group and having encounters with Jesus, and people were worried about DJ lights. There's this assumption that the things that we like, the things that are fun, are the things that God hates. And you've heard this before. That is of the devil. Football from the devil, Bobby Boucher. Or this is worldly. You can't listen to that band. They're of the world. You can't watch that show. That's worldly. You can't have black lights. That's of the world. And here's what I would tell people. The Bible tells me that I'm created in the image of God. God put something inside of my soul that loves thumping bass music. I can't help that. He made me like that, right, Peter? God created me and us to love fireworks, to love things that sparkle and black lights and glow-in-the-dark bubbles. I didn't give that to the devil. If the church gave that to the devil, what I was doing was reclaiming them back for Jesus Christ to lead people to the foot of the cross and to the restoration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so that's what we did. We celebrated the wonder of God by using the cool stuff He made for our enjoyment to point kids back to Him. And I'm convinced that our effectiveness was in large part because we weren't afraid to celebrate. And those kids, they saw that we had a God we're celebrating. What I want to do is I want to create a church where we can celebrate well. I want to be a church that can use beach balls and picnics and drive-in movies as tools for worship and celebration. If we can do that, we will show the world around us that this community is a community of joy. It's a community of laughter. It's a community that's safe and full of love. But we can show them more too. When the thousands of people gathered that day to celebrate the new wall in Jerusalem, many of them would have remembered. Many of them would have still seen the picture in their mind of when the old wall was torn down. Because on that day, the Babylonians, they came into Jerusalem and they ripped through Jerusalem and they killed thousands of people. They plundered sacred treasures. They tore down the wall and completely destroyed this temple, which was at the center of their lives. And then the Babylonians, they rounded up the men and the women and the children. They took all of the skilled laborers and artisans, and they took them captive, leading them to a faraway land, a land far away of the place they called home. And for 70 years they waited to come back home. They waited for a new temple. They waited for a new leader. They waited for a new wall. They waited for God to come through. So when they celebrated that wall, they were celebrating more than a wall. They were celebrating a God who was steadfast. A God who was just as near in joy as He was in sorrow. A God who breathed hope into bleak circumstances. A God who takes broken walls and all the rubble and the brick and the mortar and reconstructs it as a pathway for choirs. So above all, this is why celebration is such an important part of our identity as a church. It's It's because we were promised a future and an inheritance in heaven that transcends all of our circumstances here. So when we are in the middle of a difficult time, when we are poor, when we are sick, when we are fearful, when we are oppressed, when we're mistreated, when we're lonely, when we're hurt, when we don't know the way back, no matter where we live, no matter who is leading us, no matter what is happening in the world around us, we have a promise of future protection, future security, future love, future peace. And when we celebrate well, we will show them that we have a faith worth pursuing. My friend Brenda, the one who liked to eat cake, the one who loved Jesus, she died of cancer about 9 years ago. But Brenda was still sharing cake when she knew her time was limited. She was still celebrating Jesus when there wasn't much else for her to celebrate because her life was hard. She was always in pain. She never had any money. But Brenda knew there was something ahead of her that was worth celebrating. She knew that she'd be facing a day that the book of Revelation talks about. Look, God's dwelling place is now among the people, and he will dwell with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. And he will wipe every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death, no more mourning or crying or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who was seated on the throne, and this is Jesus, he says, behold, I am making all things new. So let's be a church that celebrates well. Let's be a church of joy. Let's be a church that shows the world that this is worth having and that the love of God is worth having.